Are we fighting China by basically becoming China in regards to this TikTok ban? So the ban went into effect. This caused absolute hysteria and meltdown. Here's an image of the TikTok ban. When I opened up TikTok, I got this pop up. I think this was on what, Saturday or Friday. I got this. I think it was Saturday. Sorry, TikTok isn't available right now. A law banning TikTok has been enacted in the US. Unfortunately, that means you can't use TikTok for now. We are fortunate that President Trump has indicated that he will work with us on a solution to reinstate TikTok once he takes office. Please stay tuned. So fascinating about this because Republicans were the ones who pushed for this the most. It was bipartisan. There definitely was a lot of Democrats, a lot of Republicans that were for the banning of TikTok, but it was primarily Republican. In fact, members of Trump's own cabinet now, Marco Rubio, was one of the first and most prominent voices to ban TikTok. And now there he is, potentially the next Secretary of State. And he's just going to have to eat dirt on this one because Trump's like, I'm going to save TikTok. And Marco Rubio's like, ban it, ban it. Josh Hawley was also somebody who really wanted to see this banned. Tom Cotton, lots and lots of Republicans. In fact, when it was voted, when the vote for the ban happened, more Republicans, percentage-wise, voted for the ban than Democrats. Again, there was a lot of Democrats who voted for this, but more Republicans supported it than Democrats percentage-wise. So that's important and interesting. So there's been now a complete meltdown. Once this ban took place, this is how a lot of I think a lot of Zoomers make money on TikTok. I don't really go on TikTok very often. I do have the app, but I barely use it. But it seems like a lot of Zoomers make a lot of money off of it, and that is really challenging for the gig economy workers. They're struggling to find jobs. If this is how they make money, I mean, so be it. Or if they make extra money like this, so be it. But that obviously caused a big meltdown. Here is one of the TikTok influencers. And what's interesting is that the app popping up this pop-up saying Donald Trump,
I gotta keep it real. I am
Donald
crashing
Trump.
the fuck.
Oh, can we sorry about that. The influencer saying Donald Trump is the TikTok, the app saying Donald Trump is going to save us, caused all of these influencers who are typically super against Trump. They're the ones calling him fascist. They're the ones saying, oh, this administration, we hate Donald Trump. Now they're suddenly like, oh, Donald Trump is here to save the day. Watch this.
I gotta keep it real. I am crashing the fuck out right now. I don't know what to do. Oh my god. I've already opened and closed the app probably 6 times already just to keep getting the same stupid warning message. Oh my god. Like, this just this is so dystopian. First of all, I feel pathetic that I am freaking out like this over an application being unavailable on my phone. But also, like, this has been a massive part of our life for the last 6 years. And normally when something happens, I would get on TikTok and start complaining, and I can't even do that. I feel like disconnected. I feel cut off from the world and my community. This is crazy. This is fucking crazy. God, and I can't, like, now I'm rooting for Trump? Ew! God, like, make America fucking great again, I guess. God.
So there they are, like, Trump, okay, I guess Trump is going to save the day, and he did. TikTok was banned, the law went into effect, and essentially Trump had a conversation with them and said, I'm going to be extending this for, I believe, 90 days or a period of time. So the extension happened and TikTok was restored. Yesterday, we got this sign, welcome back. TikTok, thanks for your patience and support. As a result of Trump's efforts, TikTok is back in the United States. You can continue to create, share, and discover all things you love on TikTok. So, I mean, I get it. You might be making fun of that influencer, like he's saying, oh my gosh, I feel disconnected from the world. I can't believe this. But honestly, I mean, I don't use TikTok. Maybe you don't use TikTok, but I do use Twitter. And I could imagine that feeling if Twitter were suddenly ripped off the internet and our government banned it. I would feel a similar sense because I use it so often. I know a lot of people are using Rumble or YouTube. And imagine if that same thing happened. I mean, Rumble has been banned in certain countries. You can't get it in Russia, Brazil, France. There's several countries you can't get it in. And so imagine, the application or the website that you use on a regular basis, suddenly your government says, you know what, this is a security threat and we're not going to let you use it anymore. I mean, look, Rumble's a Canadian company. Trump has been antagonizing Canada. Could you imagine if suddenly goes, all things Canada are a security threat or a national security threat. So we're going to ban Rumble. I mean, that's where this potentially leads. But I want to get into the arguments about banning TikTok. There are a lot of people on the right who say this should be banned. Here's Andy No. He says, I've lost a lot of paid subscribers on X for my posts explaining why TikTok being owned by a China based company is a huge privacy and national security risk for Americans. ByteDance already has a history of spying on American journalists through TikTok, for example. I was a bit surprised to see so many MAGA figures completely reverse their stance on the app, but then I learned a conservative ultra mega donor to political campaigns and groups owns a huge stake in ByteDance, and he's hiring a lot of lobbyists on the right. I don't know who he's actually referring to there. I guess I should have looked that up. Maybe Ben, can you look that up real quick and see who is he talking about? Who is the ultra conservative mega donor that owns a huge stake in ByteDance? So when he talks about American journalists being spied on through TikTok, so the whole reason, the reason that they claimed that they were banning TikTok was because of security, national security reasons, that this is owned by Chinese company in China, and that they're collecting data on American citizens and they could potentially spy on us. Okay, that right, and a lot of people have rightly pointed out, which we'll get into, that China has banned a huge number of apps cannot be used in China, some American or European owned apps. What he's claiming here is that so he's saying, see, there's an example of this already with ByteDance spying on American journalists. What happened was, and they fired the people that did this. They apologized. What happened was TikTok, there was some leaks coming from the company. There were some inside leaks about operations or about other things going on, and they were being leaked to journalists. And they were reporting on these inside leaks, these confidential leaks. So TikTok, some people at TikTok or at ByteDance started to investigate, and they were following and spying on these American journalists who were receiving this information, this confidential information. They were trying to figure out who was leaking confidential information about their company. Those people were subsequently fired. But it showcases the ability of this company to do something along those lines, even though I think we probably would have seen that from almost any company. I think would have been like, get to the bottom of the mole. Who's the mole? Find the mole that's leaking our information out there, our confidential information. I could almost see any company doing this, but it's being used in as example of see, they've already done this. And so they could do this again, and they could do this with other people. So it's on, there's a basis of reality there, but it's also theoretical. Theoretically, any of these social media companies can spy on us. I mean, theoretically, any of them they all have our search history. They could smear us, they could blackmail us, they could expose us, embarrass us, right? I mean, all the stuff you Google, all the, porn sites you visit, all of that stuff could be used against you by any of these companies. And a lot of these companies are owned by foreigners, or, we just say, well, but we don't mind those foreigners. Like if they're Israelis and they own a bunch of, I don't know who is it that owns all people always say it's the Jewish guys that own all the porn, but I don't know if and I think that's actually true, but I don't know if they're Israelis or they Americans. I thought the Pornhub guy was like, or no, that's the OnlyFans guy that's like Ukrainian or Jewish Ukrainian or something anyway. There's always this possibility that they could use that for like blackmailing on behalf of Israel, right? I mean, these are all real possibilities, but we don't even think about that or seem to care about that because Israel's our greatest ally for whatever reason, even though we do way more trade. And if we have a piss poor relationship with China, it affects us way more than if suddenly we had a piss poor relationship with Israel. What would change? Like if today we just woke up and said, you know what, Israel's actually an enemy terrorist state and we don't want anything to do with them. I mean, minus a slew of politicians having a bunch of extremely embarrassing information come out about them from the blackmail ops. And okay, fine, great. Then we get to clear out the trash from politics. I mean, if they're all engaging in illegal activities, we should probably find out about it and clear them out, but they want to protect themselves or whatever. So great. Beyond what would actually probably be better for this country, getting rid of the the crap in politics, the crappy politicians that are doing nefarious stuff. Besides that, I mean, what would change? Absolutely nothing would change. Would we suddenly suffer if we cut off Israel? Would we prices skyrocket on certain things? Like what? What would change? Nothing would we suddenly lose a bunch of troops? No, they don't fight any wars with us. They're not our greatest trading partner. I mean, literally, we would lose nothing. But just imagine China. I mean, if we go into a hot war with China, you saw what happened during COVID. They were able to cut us off because of, well, it was just a supply chain issue, because it was COVID, it was lockdowns, it wasn't even a war. But we couldn't even get toilet paper. I mean, we couldn't get so many things because we manufacture so much stuff and we are so dependent on China. So if we have this negative relationship with China, there is an actual real risk of this harming the average American person. So going to here, actually, I think we do have a little bit of Jeffrey Yass is the libertarian trading firm owner. That's the one who apparently has a stake in TikTok, and he's been pressuring these. And that's what people are claiming is the reason why Trump has reversed, why Republicans are reversing their stance on TikTok. Okay, so going back to what Andy says. So these journalists that were spied on, you could any company could spy on any one of us and collect this data and use it for blackmail against Americans or use it for nefarious purposes against Americans. But we seem to only care because it's China. Not that, I mean, we should care about something like that. But I think the question is, how realistic is that? And also, as a user of apps and anything online, my point is, with Googling and you visiting porn sites and Googling all kinds of weird stuff, that could all be used against you at any time. You as a user of anything online should just know this. This should be something, I mean, that's on you. It's at the end of the day, that's on you, right? So if you're searching for random stuff on TikTok and they're collecting that data on you, I don't know. I guess I'm unclear what the real ramification. I would love to hear from you. If you can come up with what is a real scenario of how this would play out, like what is the real threat? I would love to hear that. I'm not sure what you would find on TikTok. They don't allow illegal activity on TikTok. They don't allow, do they allow porn on TikTok and things like that? Like what could be used against you? So if you're scrolling through tons and tons of quick 60-second cooking tips, like how to quickly chop an onion, how to quickly peel a tomato, how to clean your stove in record speed. Like what are they collecting? What are they possibly collecting? So this idea that this is a huge privacy and national security risk for Americans. What changes if TikTok transfers to the United States, to an owner in the United States? So they don't have your phone number. I guess, this Chinese company would have your phone number. They would have your login credentials. If it goes to an American company, what is exactly the difference there? So what the Chinese spies could still go on the app and see what kind of content Americans are creating. I think the only I guess, logical argument that I can think of is that China purposefully tweaks the algorithm to poison the minds of our youth. And that could be true. Let's say that's true. Let's say they say, you know what, let's just turn them into a society of degenerates. And when you go on TikTok, it kind of looks like it. I mean, it looks like America's a society. Our youth is just a bunch of degenerates, essentially. The Chinese apps, they're doing all these really incredible things. And then you go to the Americans and they're all like, what, twerking. That would be an issue. But I would argue that TikTok is the least of our concerns when it comes to turning our youth into a bunch of degenerates. I would go after the porn companies. If you held a gun to my head and said, you have to ban something, I'm banning OnlyFans. Are you kidding me? With Lily Phillips going out there being like, I just got ran through by 100 men. Oh, you should try it. I'm now going out there and doing this. She did a cum walk, which is, she had it all over her face and she was walking around in public. And this is the kind of stuff that, and that was posted, I think, on Twitter, and people are watching. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that I would be saying, let's ban that. That is actually ruining families and the minds of youth. I mean, that's way more damaging than people on TikTok learning how to peel a tomato in 60 seconds. I mean, so that to me doesn't hold up. That argument doesn't hold up. If you're going to ban an app because of security, because of a degeneracy, a risk of degeneracy, it's the porn companies. But the porn companies, they're big lobbies. They've got a lot of money. A lot of them are American owned, and but they're allowed to. And you could claim that's a security risk. I mean, you could make the argument, which many people do, that these are owned by primarily Jewish people who tend to support Israel, and that seems to be their home country. That's how they view Israel. That's my real homeland, and this is just my temporary homeland until you bastards kick me out of in, which at some point you will. Which is why I need my real homeland over here that I need you to pay for and I need you to secure, because one day you're going to drive me out of here, and this is the only place on earth I could be safe. I mean, that's been the narrative, right? But we don't ban porn. We instead talk about banning TikTok because China's bad. Here's Sagar and Jetty. He also is very much for the ban of TikTok. And he says, I've argued for and supported a ban or forced sale of TikTok since 2018. The argument I made 6 years ago was that if we do not act now, looking at the growth curve, the service will become so popular that lawmakers will find themselves in an impossible position and a ban will never happen. Unfortunately, that is exactly what has now happened, and now a horrible precedent exists. To any foreign government out there, the message is that you're allowed to enter U.S. markets under any pretense with zero reciprocity for U.S. companies. And as long as you are popular and influential enough, the U.S. government and population will go out of its way to facilitate your access, even if we're going to go to such extraordinary lengths for a foreign company and government. Trump must make a demand for absolute reciprocity. Meta, X, Google, Snapchat, and all other US-based tech companies must be allowed total market access in China immediately with zero control by the Chinese government. Now, when the Chinese government inevitably laughs at this demand, ask yourself why. They correctly see Meta, X, Facebook, and Google as instruments of US soft power and as cultural contamination of their civic ideal, which undermines their hold on power. We, however, seem to naively believe we're immune from the same influence and have waited so long to act now that we face terrible choices. The one we've made inevitably means we will have a natural experiment now of what it means to allow a government which actively seeks to undermine our civic institutions with the most powerful known technological tool to do so. Okay, so he says, and this is accurate, he says that the Chinese governments correctly see Meta, X, Facebook, Google as instruments of US soft power and as cultural contamination of their civic ideal, which undermines their hold on power. So that's the exact argument that I make as to why we should not ban TikTok. Cultural contamination of their civic ideal. China is China. Let China be China. What do I care how China runs its country? China wants to be communist, so what? China wants to ban a bunch of apps and censor their population. Okay, that's them. I don't live in China. I wouldn't want to live in China for those very reasons. I live in America. I'm proud to be an American. I love being an American. What's the culture of America? Free speech, a free country, free people. The cultural contamination of our civic ideal, of our civic ideal. So if China sees all of these apps as a cultural contamination of their civic ideal, fine. What would be cultural contamination of our civic ideal? That would be censorship. That would be the cultural contamination coming from China. We'd be looking at it and saying, well, the Chinese do it, so we should do it. Does that make sense to you? Why should we do something just because China does it? Aren't we proud that we're different from them, that we have freedom, that we have free speech? Isn't that part of our whole American ethos, our whole identity as Americans? So why in the world would we just say, well, they view it as cultural contamination of their civic ideals, so we should too? Wait a minute, we're opposite from them. So no, actually, the cultural contamination of our civic ideal is banning apps. Now, when it comes to, look, they're not allowing us into their market. We shouldn't allow them into ours. China is a communist country. China is not a country for free speech. Not when it comes to certain things. China does have a lot of controls on their population. It works for them. The people seem to like it there. America, being a free country, has, that's part of the free country. Part of the model of a free country is We are a country up for sale. We're a country for business. We want, and Sagar is actually somebody who often argues for free market, capitalism, free market capitalism, truly free market without all of the regulation, all of these things. Well, that means that you don't regulate it, and you don't regulate it against foreigners. And if you are going to regulate it against foreigners, then it's got to be all of them. And that would be a big cultural shift for American business to say, we're only going to allow American businesses into America. That would be a very Chinese policy, and we'd be implementing it into America. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing. We should maybe think in certain aspects, there should be some things that are thought about, like should we continue to allow foreigners to buy up all of our property and land? Because that's happening, and then Americans can't afford homes, can't afford single family homes. Is that good for America? Probably not, in fact. But see, this is the difference between China and the United States. China enacts many controls over their population and in their government to protect the Chinese people. That's always what they're claiming. This is for the benefit of the Chinese people. This is for their safety, their security, and their health and welfare. And we as Americans are fundamentally against that. Why? Because you might trust the guy in office today to really truly do what's best for you and your welfare. But what about the guy that just left earlier today? Did you trust Joe Biden with your health and welfare and what was best for the American people? The guy that pushed COVID mandates on us and all of these, just got us into 2 wars, skyrocketing prices because of these wars. Do you trust that guy? So to suddenly have this kind of shift, we have to deal with all the consequences of that shift. And that would be, yeah, this guy you might trust, but the next guy that comes into office, you might not. And he has that same power. If we unleash that power and say the American government now has the power to ban companies and to censor and to block sales of certain businesses because it's best for the American people, you're going to have to just live with that consequence, no matter who's the guy in that office, in the Oval Office. And that's scary for a lot of people because, as we've seen, a stark difference between the first Trump administration and Biden, and now maybe the second Trump administration, there is a big difference in which issues each one considers important and for the benefit and safety of the American people. So our cultural civic ideal as Americans is free speech and free market. And so banning is totally and completely against that. And that is very China. I mean, we are like cutting off our nose to spite our face. We are becoming China to spite China. And that is not the way this should work. It is very true. I'm going to show you this tweet from Trung Phan, Vietnamese, who says, China bans. What if China bans? And he says, what if China bans? Just realized something about the TikTok ban, and he's being facetious on this. What if China bans, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, WhatsApp, Netflix, Google Maps, Google Drive, Google Docs, Google News, Slack, Tinder, The Washington Post, Telegram, Pinterest, Snapchat, Spotify, Twitch, Dailymotion, SoundCloud, LinkedIn, Reddit, Quora, Discord, Medium, The New York Times, BBC News, CNN, The Guardian, Reuters, Flickr, Imgur, Vimeo, Box, Dropbox, Hulu, Yahoo, IMDb, Tumblr, Stack Overflow, Shutterfly, Yelp, New York Post, Glassdoor, BuzzFeed, Scribd, WordPress, GitHub, DocuSign, GoFundMe, Microsoft OneDrive, Pocket, Goodreads, Twitch, MailChimp, Basecamp, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Nextdoor, Duolingo, Indiegogo. I mean, you name it, it's banned. These are all banned in China. Gmail, ChatGPT, Gemini, TikTok, TikTok's even banned. Roblox, Steam, Wall Street Journal, The Economist, NBC. All of these are banned in China. So I get it when people say, well, but they ban all of ours, so why shouldn't we ban theirs? That's because we have a totally different cultural civic ideal. And that is what makes America, America. And we have to live with that. And we have to live with the consequences of that cultural civic ideal. Just like they do. I mean, if their cultural civic ideal is We want to control the minds of our population so that they don't get unruly, or, we keep things functioning, and we, whatever their end game is. The whole reason why the United States went to war since World War II has been to stop communism. So if we suddenly become like the communists, we are literally pissing in the face of all of these soldiers who've died in all of these various wars that we've gone to, with the whole, we've got to protect freedom, and we've got to spread freedom, and we got to stop communism. And here we are becoming the very thing we're afraid of. And that happens all the time, right? We see this happening now with like the Israelis saying, we're afraid of being Holocausted. And so we're going to commit a Holocaust in order to prevent a Holocaust. I mean, that's what we see. We see this all the time. I have to hurt you before you hurt me. Or I must do this because otherwise you'll do this to me. I mean, this doesn't make any sense. Rand Paul knows this doesn't make any sense. And he's got, I think, a more principled viewpoint about TikTok. This is what he has to say. He is introducing legislation to stop this.
They tell you this is about China, about security and safety. That's a lie. This is about control, about fear, about silencing you. A government that can ban an app can ban a book. A government that can silence a platform can silence a person. Today it's TikTok, tomorrow it's your news, next week it's your voice. Some politicians think the First Amendment has fine print. It doesn't. The right to free speech doesn't come with exceptions. Not for apps, not for ideas, not for politicians who think they know better than you. They don't ban speech to protect you, they ban speech to control you. That's why today I'm introducing a bipartisan, bicameral bill to repeal the TikTok ban. If we don't stop this now, where does it end? To every American who believes in liberty, stand up, speak out, fight back, because freedom isn't given, it's taken.
Yeah, we cannot go down this path of we must do this for national security reasons. We have to protect you. Don't you understand? That's why we're limiting your access to all of these things, harming your life, all in the name of national security. That's a farce. That's the Patriot Act, expanded, continued, and they will do this, not just against China, but against a lot of other countries, whatever they want. It's a matter of national security, and they'll just use this willy-nilly, however they want, whenever they want. So that is not a good reason. Security, for your security and safety, is not a good reason for limiting our liberties and freedoms. It's never a good reason, and it's not American. And also to say, well, if you don't allow us into your market, we're not allowing us into ours. That's also not American. That is totally antithetical to a free market. And I mean, it's just, once again, regulation on a free market that causes a completely lopsided and rigged market system, capitalist system, rather than a true free market, which may work if we ever were to actually try it. We've never really tried it, because our idea of a free market is rigged, and it's rigged in the favor of the big money interests. They get the head start, it doesn't. They get all of the subsidies and the corporate welfare, and it's hamstringing true free market values. So either way you slice it, none of this works out with the TikTok ban. There is no real good argument for this. Whether it be, we've got to stop degeneracy. There's way worse degeneracy going on online. That should be banned well before TikTok if you're going to be using that as an excuse. It's totally against freedom and liberty principles, American principles of freedom and liberty. Giving freedom and liberty up for your safety and security means you don't deserve liberty or freedom at all if you're willing to give it up. And you will lose it if you're willing to give it up, because that's what giving it up is. And if the argument is, well, they don't let us trade, so we're not going to, they don't let us in their market, so we're not going to let them into ours. Great. So we fight communism by becoming communists. That sounds like a plan, guys. Sounds like a really great plan. We'll see. At this point, the latest is that since SCOTUS upheld the ban, since the ban went into effect and then Trump reversed it, the talk in China is that they're wanting Elon Musk to potentially be the American buyer. China trusts Elon. He has Tesla already operating in China. They have a good relationship with him. He owns X. So there is right now, he's the preferred buyer. Where this goes, who knows? You know, we'll keep an eye on it. There have been other American buyers. Of course, there was the Shark Tank, Kevin O'Leary. There's been some others, but it looks like China prefers Elon Musk. Where would he get the money? I'm sure he'd find lots of people that'd be willing to invest in that. TikTok makes a fortune. So we'll see. Maybe Elon ends up being the owner of TikTok. Wouldn't that be something? Thanks for watching this clip from the full Kim Iversen Show. If you want to watch the full show, visit KimIversonShow.com. The show airs every Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Again, it's KimIversonShow.com. See you there.